If you have been to your local supermarket lately, you probably have noticed empty shelves where some of the most popular grocery staples should be. This year, a series of food retailers, including big names such as Walmart and Target, are experiencing shortages of a wide range of products as a result of supply chain disruptions, higher costs of fuel and fertilizers, and extreme weather events. Now, industry insiders are telling us that the outlook for agricultural production in the U.S. is extremely grim. No one really knows for sure when the supply of many of these everyday essentials will bulk back up, and while shortages persist, prices continue to climb higher, with some painful increases that range from 10 to over 40% just over the past 12 months. American farmers and ranchers have done everything in their power to keep the nation's supermarket shelves supplied over the past 2 years are now on the edge of desperation. They are seeing their crops being destroyed by the ongoing drought. Their livestock headcounts have shrunk by the millions, and they're also dealing with some of the most expensive prices of critical materials and energy ever recorded. Much of the food that has been grown in the past year won't ever make it into our food system, and this means we're about to see shelves get even barer at our local stores in the coming weeks and months. That's what we're going to expose in today's video. Before moving on, please support us by leaving a thumbs up in this video, subscribe to our channel so you stay up to date with the most important news. Now, food industry insiders are warning us that soon supplies are going to get even tighter all over the country. In the last year, millions of U.S. farmers and ranchers witnessed the worst planting and harvesting conditions seen this century, and they're being forced to watch the decimation of their crops and the decline of their chicken and beef cow herds as a myriad of problems piles up. Missouri farmer Darvin Bentledge, a 66-year-old fourth-generation cattle and grain farmer, highlighted that the extreme weather that he and his neighbors are facing has taken them on a roller coaster ride. Earlier this year, it rained so much he had to delay planting. Then the drought came, destroying countless acres of crops. That was a rough start, Bentledge said in an interview with Forbes. In my 50 years of farming, it never went from being so wet to so dry. It's the fastest I've ever seen. He added, "Pray for rain. Sometimes it seems like it can't get any worse." At the same time, Nebraska rancher Trent Lewis, who hails from 6 generations of farmers dating back to the 1830s, notes that soaring diesel prices are making things harder for farmers during this year's harvest season. Since 2000, Lewis has been educating his community about the food system, where our food comes from, and who's producing it, how shortages could become a reality, and why disruptions are popping up everywhere. Conservation is about producing more with less, Lewis told the Epoch Times. In 1900, it took 10 acres of land to produce enough food to feed one person per year. In 2021, it takes less than a third of an acre. That's all thanks to diesel power, he said. But with diesel prices nearing $5 a gallon, smaller food producers who can't afford the higher costs are deciding to abandon some of their crops instead, something that has been keeping Lewis up all night. He isn't worried about his family. Raising cattle and pigs for almost 100 years means that his household will have enough food on their table despite the challenges plaguing the nation's food system. What really scares him, he says, is the prospect that the other 329.5 million Americans, especially those living in cities like New York and Los Angeles, will eventually find out that there ain't enough food supplies to feed everyone. Food insecurity is a grave national security danger, he warns. Today, 24 million U.S. households do not have enough to eat on a regular basis. And unfortunately, that number is set to shoot up as more issues impact our domestic production. In 2022, nearly 3/4 of U.S. farmers saw a reduction in harvest yields due to the dry weather, with 37% saying they were tilling over fields that won't produce anything because of a lack of water. That's a 13% increase from last year. According to Farm Bureau data, 1/3 of orchard farmers nationwide and 50% in California said they were ripping up trees, an increase from 17% in 2021. Ranchers are also having to make some very tough decisions. A new report revealed that 2/3 of the country's ranchers are selling off animals or selling off birds, with average herd sizes dropping by 36%. The biggest herd declines are in Texas, collapsing 50%, New Mexico, collapsing 43%, and Oregon, 41%, a clear example of the wide geographic distribution of the distress. Even more worryingly, as hot temperatures wreak havoc on California's agricultural land, which produces most of America's food, including 3/4 of its beef cattle and 70% of its vegetables, fruits, and nuts. Agricultural producers are having to go farther to find water, and higher fuel costs are forcing them to pay more to pump what isn't coming from the sky. Nebraska farmer Kevin Fulton said, "That predicament is still better than what's happened to the land that's not irrigated. The pastures are burning up." Fulton, a 28-year veteran of farming, the land he inherited, exposed to Forbes. He continued, "Some aren't going to produce anything, and the yields have been drastically reduced. This wears on you mentally. You're working hard to keep up with the irrigation. It's depressing. These kinds of things sometimes push farmers over the edge," he added. The blistering heat is also contributing to the dissemination of agricultural pests that devour key food crops, the University of Washington warned. A 3.6 Fahrenheit increase in temperatures can boost the number and appetite of insects, causing them to destroy 50% more wheat and 30% more maize, the report says. The rising heat stress is having a major impact on yields, with harvests of staple crops significantly down this year, which is likely to push the cost of grains such as corn and oats even higher. Those working at the very root of the U.S. food supply chain can't catch a breath. They're also facing labor shortages, surging processing costs, and transportation delays. Meanwhile, food retailers are specifically warning that current conditions are likely to prevent the industry from supplying enough supplies to the general population. Egg Innovation CEO John Brunquell recently alerted that an uptick in demand coinciding with labor, freight, and vendor issues may soon hamper grocery supplies. Brunquell noted that businesses are already operating at 100% capacity, but that still may not solve the problem. He stressed, if that trend continues, it's going to put us in a challenging situation with meeting the demand. In August, the price of beef rose nearly 21% year over year, while pork and chicken increased 16.8% and 9.2% respectively, and eggs jumped by nearly 40%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. On social media, a flood of posts on Facebook and Twitter exposed that even the world's biggest retailer is not immune to shortages and supply chain challenges. In a series of short videos, shoppers exposed empty meat and produce aisles at Walmart. Shelves were left bare in both sections, and a sign reading, "Due to circumstances beyond our control, we are experiencing a delay in receiving some fresh food products," was taped to the produce aisle. A number of our Walmart supercenters are experiencing some recent internal supply chain challenges affecting the meat category, resulting in product shortages, according to a statement from the company. Of course, empty shelves are being spotted in many other supermarkets across the United States, but the fact that the largest and most well-resourced big box retailer on the planet is having supply issues should be a wake-up call for all of us. That is a very ominous sign for U.S. consumers, the retail sector, and the broader U.S. economy. If anyone was able to navigate the current supply chain challenges, it should have been the big box retailer. And yet, a couple of weeks ago, the company canceled billions in orders as their earnings dramatically dropped in the last quarter. The trouble is, as consumer demand continues to rise, smaller retailers are much less equipped to absorb that demand. Target was one of the first companies to signal choppy waters ahead. The company has already seen its profit margin decline twice this year as the global supply chain crisis resulted in some severe inventory imbalances. The same happened with Kohl's, Gap, Bath & Body Works, and even the e-commerce company Shopify. Many other retailers are expected to get caught in the crosshairs as more supply disruptions emerge in the coming months. In other words, if the shelves are already bare in your area, they may be staying that way for a while. This is a global crisis, and the U.S. is right at the center of it. On Tuesday, the UN food chief warned that the world is facing a perfect storm on top of a perfect storm. He urged leaders to address the fertilizer supply shortage right now in order to prevent widespread food shortages next year. Otherwise, there's gonna be chaos all over the world. World Food Program Executive Director David Beasley said in an Associated Press interview, "There are millions of people in 45 countries knocking on famine's door," Beasley emphasized. "If we don't reach these people, you will have famine, starvation, destabilization of nations unlike anything we saw in 2007 to 2008 and 2011, and you will have mass migration. It's a perfect storm on top of a perfect storm, and with the fertilizer crisis we're facing right now, with droughts, we're facing a food pricing problem in 2022. This created havoc around the world. If we don't get on top of this quickly, and I don't mean next year, I mean this year, you will have a food availability problem in 2023, and that's gonna be hell." Sadly, he's right on target. In the past several months, uprisings due to food shortage or threats of potential shortage have boiled over into revolts in many countries, including in Europe. It may be a matter of time before things start going south here in America. At this point, we all want the supply chain crisis to be resolved, inflation to go back down, and life to return to the way that it used to be. Unfortunately, none of those things are gonna happen. We must start bracing for a future where scarcity is the new normal. Everyone in the industry is telling us to prepare for the worst, so it would be unwise to ignore their alerts. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy our content, we strongly recommend you find 7-Year Apocalypse, the latest book by the economist and financial expert Michael Snyder. In the meantime, don't forget to hit the bell to always get our notifications, and please share this message with friends and family.